Hello and welcome to episode 25 of the Writer's Block from True Faith. Tonight we're live again, so if you've got any comments, any questions for us, just pop them in the comments section below and we'll get round to answering them. I'm James, I'll be your host, and tonight I'm joined by regulars Chris Curry and Dan, and a very special guest. We're delighted to be joined by Chris Waugh from The Athletic. How are we all doing, lads? You well?
Yes, very good, thank you.
Very well, thank you.
Good, mate. Good, James. Good to see you as well, mate.
Yes, very good
to see
indeed.
You all. Yeah, good to see you all. Thanks, guys. Right, we've just got the two topics for you tonight, so we'll get straight into it. Firstly, we're going to talk about the Brentford game on Saturday, and more specifically, how our new manager should approach it. So, Chris Waugh, I'll come to you first, mate. What's your thoughts on this, and how should Eddie Howe be approaching this game?
Well, I'm absolutely fascinated to see what he does do, because Eddie Howe has a very particular style of play. He's come in and said that, and even if by the end of his time at Bournemouth had become a bit more counter-attacking and probably lacked in the attacking senses that they had previously, what Eddie Howe wants to do is he wants to play front foot football. He says he wants to be more possession-based. For most of his time at Bournemouth, they tended to play with a four-man defence, 4-4-1-1 usually, with a sort of two up front, a number 10/9 behind another forward. And it's interesting to see how quickly he thinks he can actually do that with Newcastle, because the issue with this Newcastle squad, as we all know, is that it's really not set up to play any sort of way. It's so unbalanced in so many ways. You wouldn't, for so long, there's been square pegs and round holes, because really, if you pick an 11, can you pick an 11 in any specific formation? So I'll be fascinated to see how much he does change. I do think that we will see a back four. I expect that. That's not necessarily say he might surprise me. He might go a back three, because at Bournemouth he did sometimes play that. He even played Ryan Fraser on occasion as a right wing back. I think when they won at Chelsea 3-0, Ryan Fraser played as a right wing back. But what was crucial to Eddie Howe's Bournemouth team when they played particularly well was his fullbacks. And so I'm interested to see what he tries to do there. Is he going to play Matt Ritchie as an out-and-out fullback, as we've seen recently? Is he going to bring someone like Jamal Lewis back inside? I'd be surprised if the likes of Jamal Lewis and Fabian Schär play on Saturday, for the particular reason that they've been away on national duty. So I think he'd have focused on the players that he has. Although Schär, over time, I expect may come into the side as someone who can actually be a ball-playing defender. That's what Eddie Howe wants to see. But I think that we'll see a Newcastle side that for once actually try to not necessarily dominate possession. I don't think they're going to have like 75% possession, but try and have at least more of the ball than they have recently. Try and actually take the game to Brentford a little bit more. And I mean, Callum Wilson will be absolutely pivotal to whatever they do. Obviously, he was at Newcastle anyway, but he has been previously for Eddie Howe at Bournemouth. He's like his ideal striker, or someone who can run in behind, but also sort of lead the line. But who plays as the number 10 if he does play that 4-4-1-1 will be fascinating to see. Will it be Alan Saint-Maximin as he had played, or will he be further wide? Will it be someone like Joe Linton? Because a lot of the players who've been there at Bournemouth, the likes of Josh King, were a bit more physical, a bit more sort of linky up play. So maybe we might actually eventually find a position for Joe Linton that he can play well in. So I'm fascinated to see how he approaches Saturday, how different they are. Will it be revolution or will it be evolution? I expect it to be the latter, but it'll be fascinating to see.
Really interesting stuff there, Chris. I've got a few comments coming in. Ari says, Willock number 10, please. Going back earlier, your good friend Yusuf said aggressively, emphasised there. And he's also said, my baby started crying there when Waugh mentioned Joe Linton. Very good, Yusuf, very good. Keep the comments coming in, guys. Paul, evening, lads. Good to see you watching as well. Yeah, there's another interesting question, I think, they're coming in from, if I just go back, Ginger Plums, I think that's our friend Dan. Does Shelvey suit how plays? Very interesting one. Dan, I'm going to come to you next. Do you want to answer that one? And what's your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to a podcast earlier, actually, specifically about this topic. And it was Andrew Musgrove's Everything is Black and White podcast on the Chronicle, and it was him and Matthew Raisbeck discussing literally this very matter about John Joe Shelvey and will he fit into the Eddie Howe way of playing. And I think what they say, and what I'm going to reiterate, is that John Joe Shelvey, there is no doubt he has talent there. I mean, we've seen this, admittedly, not consistently enough, but there is talent there with John Joe Shelvey. You know, there's no one else at our club who can pass a ball like him, in my opinion. Obviously, though, Eddie Howe does like high press. He likes quite attacking, flowing football, quite pacey football. And John Joe Shelby, I mean, with the best will in the world, does not have a lot of pace, does he? Turns quite slowly, in my opinion. And so, will he fit in? It's hard to say. I mean, the one thing you could say is that obviously, if Eddie Howe was wanting to play quickly and use the Callum Wilson and the Ryan Frasers, etc., with their pace, John Joe Shelby can spray those balls to them and help them run in the channels with them. So that's the one way it could work. If he's sort of playing that sort of like quarterback role, imagine if we were in American football, sort of the Tom Brady style, and just sit in, not have to do an awful lot of running. I mean, obviously, he probably enjoyed that anyway, not having to do much running. But just spray those balls and try and catch teams in behind and exploit the pace that we have. That's my thoughts, at least.
A few more comments coming in here. Ben Thomas says, honestly, don't think we'll see much of Shelby anymore. He's too unreliable and doesn't work hard enough. The Geordie Parrot there, Shelby will be dropped. I think many fans probably share that opinion or those opinions, to be honest. Rumours of Wilson being injured, true. Cody Hamill says, Chris Curry, I'll come to you next, mate. Do you want to take that one? I don't know if you've heard that one or you want to answer that and also give me your thoughts on how I should approach this game.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one, and it's just sent a shiver down my spine to even read that, to be honest with you. As Chris rightly says, without Callum Wilson, we're in real trouble. I mean, St. Maximin's a box of tricks, as we all know, but he doesn't score goals, really. He's not a massive goal threat. He will take guys on every dance up and down the pitch and make them dizzy and have a bit of motion sickness, but he won't penetrate, score a goal, possibly even find that killer pass either, which, Dan's right to allude to Shelby on that, but Shelby's work rate is way off for Eddie Howe, so that there's a huge issue there for John Joe Shelby. But yeah, I mean, if Wilson's injured, we're in big trouble because I think, Yusef's right. Yusef's baby's right to cry about Joe Litton because he's not the answer. Sadly, we don't have any other goal scorers apart from Dwight Gale. Now, whether Eddie Howe can get Dwight Gale moving if Wilson is injured, then that's a huge task for the manager to do that. But in terms of the way he attacks the game, I think he's just got to be more brave. He's just got to get on the front foot. He's got to go for Brentford. I think, I said this a few weeks ago about Brentford when everybody was waxing lyrically about them. There was always going to be a point where they plateaued and they dipped a bit. And I think we're getting them right at that time when they're starting to dip a little bit. So the confidence will be a bit shaken. There won't be the Brentford they were at the start of the season when they took Arsenal to task. And fair enough, Arsenal aren't the same Arsenal as they were then either. So I think we've got a really good chance if we're positive, if we get on the front foot right from the off at St James's Park with a crowd behind us. I think we've got a really good chance of winning this game. But without Callum Wilson, it's much more difficult. So fingers crossed that isn't true, to be fair, James.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. Just the listeners out there who are watching us live, please feel free to pop your comments, your questions in, and we'll get round to answering them. So I want to ask, staying on this topic, our good friend Ed from the Writers' Block made a very good point the other day when we were thinking about topics for tonight's show. How big is this Brentford game? And in the grand scheme of things, is this one of the biggest NUFC matches in recent years? Chris Waugh, I'll come to you on that.
I think this game's absolutely huge. I mean, it feels unfair in many ways on Eddie Howe that it is so big, but the position Newcastle are in and the games that they have coming up after this little mini run they've got now, they can't afford to waste any more of these opportunities. And that's why the start of the season was so alarming. And when people externally were looking at it and Steve Bruce kept on saying, I think we're playing well, it'll come eventually. So, well, actually, Newcastle had a relatively kind start to the season. They didn't pick up points against the teams in and around them who were always going to be in and around them in the bottom half of the table. And so they don't have many more opportunities in the first half of the season. 3 of the next 4 home games are against Brentford, Norwich and Burnley. Realistically, Newcastle need at least 7 points from those matches, in my opinion, to even think about being close to not being adrift come the turn of the year. And what Eddie Howe needs to do over the course of the 9 matches between now and the January transfer window is make sure he can keep Newcastle just about in touch. They're already 5 points adrift. They've already got a terrible goal difference. And so Brentford is huge, and I think it's huge in so many ways in terms of if Eddie Howe can get a win, if Newcastle can somehow find a way to win, the momentum that could bring as well. Whereas if they lose on Saturday, or if it's a really awful draw in terms of they don't play particularly well and sort of struggle, then I think that could just suck all the positive momentum. Because the weird thing is how many people I've seen saying they're so excited for Saturday, and you just think to sort of 6 weeks ago after that Wolves game and how low everyone was and how sort of negative everyone felt about the future of the club. And then within 5 days, the takeover has happened. And that positivity has remained, even given the fact that Steve Bruce stayed on a bit longer, and even given the fact that the managerial search took a lot longer than many may have liked. And even given that it was Eddie Howe in the end, and some people may have thought, well, why couldn't he have been appointed earlier? Could it have been someone else? And even given the fact primarily that Newcastle still haven't won a game. And during that period of time, during Graham Jones's time in interim charge, Newcastle, certainly in attack, were pretty awful. And so to eventually, though, that momentum will start to stunt, and Eddie Howe needs a positive result early on. I think he recognises that, because if they can get a win, then it may give them a bit of momentum going into what is a very hard run of fixtures. And if they can start playing well, if they can gain some confidence, then maybe those fixtures in December don't become as daunting. So I'd say, yeah, this is probably the biggest fixture in Newcastle's recent history, probably the last 3 or 4 years, because there's been obviously some significant issue Newcastle have had in terms of being in a relegation battles over the course of the last few years, but they've never quite been cut adrift. I know there's similarities with the start of the 2018-19 season when Newcastle didn't win any of the first 10 games, but teams above them hadn't won any games. They were never adrift. They were never massively out of it. They're already 5 points behind the teams above them. And you look at the teams directly above the relegation zone, and you don't really expect them to be there. So it's not even as if you look at it and say they're 5 points behind the teams who are likely to go down. You take out the bottom 3, and then you look at it and you think Villa will spend money probably. They've got Steven Gerrard coming in. You expect them to improve. The gap between them and the teams that they need to beat is already significant, and that's why I think Saturday is absolutely massive.
Fully agree with that, Chris, and brilliant points there. A couple of other comments coming in. Yusuf earlier said this team is not used to having the ball and keeping it. Going to be really hard to change that culture overnight. We are such a passive team and have been for a while. It's a habit. Yeah, fully agree, Yusuf. Hopefully the 2 weeks Eddie Howe has already had with the players that'll go to improve in that style. Yeah, Dan, I'm going to come to you again. Same question. How big is this game?
Oh, it's massive, isn't it? I think we've done our sort of Newcastle habit of hyping it up a lot, but I think for once it deserves it, because this is the first time in 14 years we've played a match without obviously Mike Ashley before that, but then in the last 2 years without Steve Bruce. So it's massive. Like the two things that the majority of supporters have wanted out for some time now have finally come about, and this is the first game without both of them. But then, as Chris says as well, we're in a relegation battle and we are 5 points adrift. And so we need to start picking up points as soon as possible. It's not just a case of, we'll have to take a little bit of time to get used to this new match. No, we need points straight away. We can't afford to be sitting passively and still just accepting defeat like we have been doing. So yeah, it is massive. As Chris Curry mentioned before, the crowd could be absolutely key. That they need to get behind them, because if it goes flat again, then suddenly, the mood on the pitch goes as well, and we're back to square one. So hopefully they'll stir them up pre-game. Hopefully the flag display will be fantastic, as it has been in the past couple of weeks. But yeah, it's huge. And if we don't win, as Chris Waugh said, what then happens after all this positivity? Where do we then go? That's my big worry. But I do have faith that we win. Now, I don't know if Chris Waugh has any inside knowledge about Callum Wilson being injured. Who knows? Because that does scare me.
I haven't heard anything specific. I've seen people out there saying I've put a couple of inquiries in. I haven't really had anything concrete coming back. I mean, obviously, we know he has had a lot of injury problems at Newcastle, and that's been part of the issue with him. His goal-scoring record this season in particular is fantastic. On the rare occasions he's actually played, I know he wasn't pictured in training photos, so I don't know specifically that he's out, but obviously there is a concern there, the fact that some people have raised it, but I'm sorry, I haven't got any clarity on that.
It's all right. You just made me more worried, Chris. Thank you. But yeah, but you'd like to think that even if he is not playing, and well, we still have a decent attacking threat. I think our attacking threat is better than our defensive stability at the moment. Even without Callum Wilson, we still did score goals. Obviously not as many, but we did still seem to pose some sort of a threat. And so, yeah, that doesn't worry me as much as, say, can Eddie Howe sort out this defence. But in all, massive game. We've got some other comments coming in, which, James, I'll pass back to you.
Well, Tim Woods came up with a very interesting one here. Really need 9 points from Brentford, Burnley and Norwich. Massive task, but we need to keep in touch with the teams above. I mean, that's absolutely bang on there. Norwich with a new manager as well might be a tougher game than we previously thought now. But yeah, I mean, you've got to look at minimum 7. 9 really from them, as Tim said. Anything less than 7, and you will really start to worry as a fan. If not, you're already massively worried as it is. But look, there's massive optimism now. Even there, our league position doesn't necessarily show that. But Chris Curry, I'm going to come to you now. How big is this? How big is this game?
It's huge. I couldn't agree with the lads even more, especially what Chris was saying about the 3 home games. Eddie Howe is a really intelligent guy, and he already said he watched this club even before he took the job. I think he's had an eye on those fixtures, and he's looked at the points, he's looked at the players, he's looked at the weaknesses, and him and Jason Tindall have probably identified games where they think they could take points out of, and these 3 games at home will be definitely those kind of fixtures. I think that's the reason why he went straight in the training pitch and not into a press conference. I think he knew he had to get straight on the pitch, work with what he had, look at the weaknesses, identify it, develop a program, and try and get as much out of the players as he could just before that first game came back. Internationals probably haven't helped them, as Chris rightly said, with Shaw being away, Miggy, guys like that. It's going to be difficult for him to get his purest starting 11 than his mind that he maybe wants to get on the pitch. But I think the way he plays, and certainly the way training has looked from the outside looking in, there seems to be a real positivity, a drive about the players. He's challenging them to be better. And we've got a lot of really talented young players. Joe Willock, last season, we were talking about him for the England squad, most of us. He was a fantastic attacking midfielder, a real threat, a thorn in the side of a lot of big teams, not just the teams around us. So if you can get some of these players firing, there's no reason why we can't pick up the points. But that makes a good point about Norwich. I would have rather Norwich hadn't got Dean Smith, because I actually think he's quite a good manager. And there's some decent players in that Norwich squad. I mean, I think we've all watched Billy Gilmore shine for Scotland in those qualifiers. He can't get in that Norwich team. You put him in with his kind of eye for a pass. Now, he could change their whole midfield. He could create chances for Pukki, who could score goals. So, we've got to be very careful about what the other teams are going to be doing. But primarily, we have to concentrate on ourselves. And I think, just answer that question, James, it's a massive game. For me, I agree with Tim. It's got to be 9 points out of those 3 home games if we've got any chance of staying in this league. Has to be.
Todd Cantwell, another player in Norwich, would probably look to, Dean Smith would probably look to bring back in there as well. But you're right, we've got to look at ourselves and concentrate on ourselves for now. Some more comments coming in there. We've got UK Jack 67 expecting a draw on Saturday, to be honest, but also expecting a surprise from the Arsenal game after another week coaching with the internationals back. Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, Arsenal are playing pretty well at the minute, but you never know. You never know. Ian McKenna, don't panic, lads. Don't panic, lads. We're in good hands. Hope so, Ian. Fingers crossed. I'll quickly go with a score prediction just before we move on to the next one. Chris Waugh, I'll come to you first.
Well, my head says 2-2, but I'm going to go with my heart, and I'm going to say that I think Newcastle will win 3-1. And I hope I'm positive on that front. Ivan Toney to score for Brentford, inevitably. But I do think that Newcastle, well, I hope Newcastle are going to win. That's partly based on hope, but I do just think the positive momentum they have. At some point, they have to win a football match, surely. The odds say they have to at some stage, so I'm going to go with that.
Dan, what about you?
Well, Chris Curry knows that I'm ever the optimist from videos on his channel. And yeah, I'm going to go with Chris Waugh on this one and say a win, which I'm scared to say because in case it doesn't happen. But as Chris Waugh says there, it's got to happen eventually, hasn't it? With the players that we have, this is not a side that shouldn't be going this long without winning a game, in my opinion. So will it be tight? I'm probably more tempted to say 2-1, to be honest, but we shall see. 2-1 is what I'll go for.
Mark Farrington agrees with you there, Dan. 2-1 Newcastle.
We love Mark. We love Mark. Chris's
Ian
buddy.
McKenna My heart says 3-0. My head says 2-1. Another one there. We've got the Geordie Parrot says 2-0 win as well. I think it'll be 2-0. But finally, Chris Curry.
Yeah, I'm going to be positive as well. We're going to have a full house here. So I'm going to say 2-1. I agree with Dan. I do think it'll be the case of the X for Ivan Toney getting a goal. But just on the Callum Wilson point, actually, I think there might be a little bit of mind play here, just a little bit of putting that out there just so it bubbles out. Maybe Brentford are going to think, oh, Wilson's injured again. He's got a bad record, that he rocks up on the team sheet on Saturday and catches them out. So, yeah, I'm going to go for 2-1. Callum Wilson with a winner. So let's hope he's fit.
Good stuff. I think there's a lot of positivity in the comments tonight, which is brilliant to see. Right, moving on to topic number 2. This is the final topic tonight. Who is NUFC's best centre-back of the last decade? Now, I think it's fair to say we haven't been blessed with many top centre-halves in recent years, but there are 2 or 3 who do spring to mind who have had decent careers at the club. So, Dan, I'll come to you first. Who would be your choice?
We discussed this before the show started, James, when we were all going to meltdown about the show nearly not happening. I think Colaccini has to be up there in my opinion, doesn't he? This is a man who, in 2011-12, that season we finished 5th, got into the PFA Team of the Year, which is something that a Newcastle player hasn't done in my memory for some time. And obviously, it shows how good that team that year was, and the fact that he, of all people, got in it as well, because of course, you had Bar, Cisse, Cabaye, Ben Arthur all that year, and yet it was Colaccini who made it into the side. So yeah, he would be my pick. I mean, obviously, we've had quite a lot of centre backs in this time, despite of course none of them being particularly world beaters. Obviously, you think of Stephen Taylor, who was recently at the Foundation dinner, had his good moments. Certainly had his interesting moments as well. Very good actor, not really. And then, of course, you have current Gators manager Mike Williamson, who I've got to know quite well. Lovely bloke, to be fair. And, I mean, he only scored 1 goal, unfortunately, for Newcastle. And some of his defending wasn't always brilliant, but did have really good games as well, in my opinion. And, well, obviously now you have the current crop of, say, Lascelles, Clark, who have served the club very well, but perhaps have had their day. And of course, I've seen comments in the comment section coming up too, saying Lejeune, Fernandez as well. Lejeune was good, of course, but a bit injury prone. I remember, of course, that first game when Harry Kane snapped him. That wasn't great, was it? When he first joined the club. But yeah, but in my opinion, it has to be Colaccini. In my opinion, but I think Lejeune had the potential to be that good if he wasn't injury prone and then didn't obviously move away when he did. But that's my opinion. James, you're still on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, there was a bit of an issue there, a bit of a technical issue. Yeah, there's a few comments coming in again. Lejeune seems to be mentioned. Colaccini last 10 years. Carl Colaccini, Fede Lejeune. Ginger Plums Lejeune was class year class. Paul Lejeune would have been superb. It was too injury prone. Yeah, I fully agree. I think Lejeune has to get a special mention. But Chris Curry, I'll come to you. What do you think? Anyone else other than Colaccini?
Well, I'm trying to decide whether Grant Handley's worth a shout, mate. He was absolutely superb, wasn't he? I'm only joking. No, it's quite funny when we first came on there, I misread the question. I was going to go back and shout Jonathan Woodgate, then I realised it was way back. So I'm going back to my old-time Newcastle centre-half. But yeah, I think Colaccini has to be the man, really, doesn't he, for that time period, arguably the best Newcastle centre-backs of all time. Colaccini's in that equation. He was so composed, he was so calm. I think Stevie Taylor looked better alongside him. Stevie Taylor was a kind of a, blood and guts type centre-half, made stupid tackles. That's probably why he got so many injuries. But yeah, Colaccini was real silk. But it's a real shame what happened to Lejeune. I think a combination of the injuries and severe mismanagement by Steve Bruce. I think that we had a real Rolls Royce of a centre-half there, brilliant on the ball. His reading of the game was second to none. And I think if they could have just worked on some fitness for him, and maybe worked on a training program from, I'm not saying like Ledley King, but something similar to make sure that he didn't get so many injuries. I think Lejeune could have ousted Colaccini 100%. But yeah, Colaccini was fantastic. Like Paul makes a good point there. He was fantastic earlier on. He did start to drop and become a bit of a liability towards the back end. Silly Cruyff turns and thinking he could knock the ball over Suarez's head quite easily, which was obviously very, very naive of him. But yeah, it's got to be Colaccini, I suppose, mate, if you're looking at it on paper.
Chris Waugh, do you want to have the final thoughts on that one? What do you think?
I'd have to agree. I think it has to be Colaccini. And the interesting thing about Colaccini is that obviously his first season, 18 months at the club, weren't great. And Newcastle were relegated that season. He was a controversial signing in many ways. And it took him time to adjust to English football. But I think the season in the Championship was the making of him. It was the making of Jonas Gutierrez, the making of Jose Enrique. And he really built from that, and he was an interesting sort of leader because he wasn't someone who sort of shouts and balls and he just led from what he did in his sort of actions, and he was so cool and composed on the ball. And in that season, as Dan said, when he managed to get into the PFA Team of the Year, he was absolutely sensational that season, and Newcastle were very, very good defensively, and he really built from the back. And so I think that it's hard to look beyond Colaccini because there is so little competition, really. There have been so many centre-backs, but not many particularly brilliant ones. Florian Lejeune, I agree, I think had the potential to be. I think he had a bit of everything, maybe lacked a little bit of pace, but beyond that, he was so cool and composed on the ball. He was brilliant in terms of switch and play from one side to the other, and excellent with both feet, and also read the game very well. I agree to an extent that they sort of mismanaged by Steve Bruce in terms of injuries. I also think, though, that by that stage, the injuries had taken their toll on him, and I think that Bruce made a call quite early on that he thought that physically Lejeune wasn't going to be up to it in the Premier League. You can say rightly or wrongly on that front, and yes, that the way that he managed him during the Christmas period 2019-20 was fairly awful, and that Leicester game was absolutely horrendous. But in general, yeah, I think Lejeune is such a shame because there was so much potential there.
Thanks for that, Chris. Dan, I think there was a couple of things you wanted to mention just before we finish. Do you want to
Yeah, that's right. Of course, obviously we've had that good chat about the defenders there, and we'll have a few topics on those to come in the coming weeks. Sort of just like quick debate about recent history about Newcastle or whatever. Another comment there. But yes, just in the last half an hour or so, Newcastle have confirmed the new coaching setup under Eddie Howe, and so what we've got in this statement is that obviously Jason Tyndall is becoming a first-team assistant head coach alongside Graham Jones. And then we've got Stephen Purchase and Simon Weatherstone, who were at Bournemouth, who have also become first-team coaches. Graham Jones, of course, staying on. Ben Dawson is still in the first-team development, and goalkeeper coach Simon Smith. Also a brand new sports science department with Dan Hodges, who was also at Bournemouth, I'm reading here. And then finally, that the two Steves alongside the other Steve. All the Steves have now gone from Newcastle. It is no longer Steve Castle FC. We now have... So, yeah, Steve Agnew and Stephen Clements have both left the club. Of course, they were alongside Graham Jones and Steve Bruce in the previous regime. So, yeah, complete change at Newcastle. I don't know if anyone has any comments on that. With all the Steves now being gone and a brand new coaching setup, especially with looking ahead to sort of like a sports science department. Is that something like new at Newcastle? Is that, I'm not really sure, to be honest. Have we ever had so much of a focus on that? And I mean, Chris Waugh probably know better than me.
They have had sports science department, and I mean, one of their sports scientists left in the summer to go and join Rafa Benitez at Everton because he'd worked with him. He'd been at Newcastle for a long while. And he'd actually moved positions, Jamie Harley, but Newcastle did replace him, and so that they do already have a sports science department, but it's been beefed up, and Eddie Howe's looking at it in sort of different ways. So I think it's been restructured to a certain extent.
Very good. Thank you for the input there. Very good. And finally, the last thing we want to mention is the True Faith Live event, which is in a couple of nights' time, Thursday night at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets have unfortunately sold out, so if you're looking to buy one now, it's a bit of a shame that you can't come along. But obviously the fact that it has sold out means that we'll have a full house in there. Now, Chris Waugh, you are on the panel. Are you looking forward to it?
I'm very much looking forward to it, yeah. I feel privileged to have been invited along. It's the first time I'll have been on the panel at one of these events. So, yeah, really, really looking forward to it. And obviously for an absolutely wonderful cause. So brilliant that so much money's been raised. And thank you, everyone who has bought a ticket.
Yeah.
And we all look
James,
forward.
You two are going on.
Yeah, well, the four of us are going, as far as I'm aware.
We're all going to be there.
to seeing you all there, and very much look forward to hearing what you've got to say on the night, Chris, as well. But yeah, hopefully all the listeners out there who have bought a ticket will be looking forward to the event as much as I am as well. Paul says, yeah, looking forward to Thursday. It's going to be a superb event and great for charity. That's a brilliant way to finish the show. So yeah, I think that about does it for tonight. And thanks for the three of you all for your contributions and everyone who left a comment or left a question for us. Just a quick reminder, if you want to get involved with True Faith, or if you fancy being on the writer's block, feel free to drop us a message on Twitter at TFNUFC. So I hope you all enjoyed the show and look forward to seeing you next time. Cheers, lads. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.